Israel. Hamas stands for Harakat al-Muqawama al-Islamiyah, which stands for the Islamic Resistance Movement. They act as both the government, the military, provide services, and provide media for the Palestinians, all within the Gaza Strip. And so Hamas is both the government, but it's also the military. The military aspect is the Al-Qassam Brigade, and the Al-Qassam Brigade is 15,000 to 40,000. The exact number is unknown. Fighters, people who are willing to fight for the Palestinian cause. And the Al-Qassam Brigade has been designated a terrorist group. They use suicide bombers. They use missiles, and now they have actually carried out an attack on Israeli soil.
So what is the Gaza Strip?
So the Gaza Strip is this area along southwestern end of Israel. It's 25 miles long and it's 4 to 8 miles wide. It varies in size. It's the place where 2 million Palestinians live. It's the home of Hamas, but it's also the home of a lot of Palestinians who have been there since Israel was formed. The Palestinians live both in the Gaza Strip and over on the West Bank, but the Hamas is in the Gaza Strip.
Okay. And then what is Palestine?
So the Palestinians have lived in this area since 500 BCE. They are Muslims, and they are Muslims from this particular area, from this part of the world. And so they have a long history there in this area. And the Palestinians have been displaced by the Israelis when the area that is now Israel was given to the Israelis by the United Nations as a homeland for a place for Jews to go to that were displaced around Europe and throughout Russia during World War II. They had been traveling to that area following World War I. They were traveling to that area, but after World War II, a large number of Jews went to Israel to have a place where they felt safe at. And so the UN really formed Israel, and in the process of doing so, they displaced the Palestinians.
So that brings us to our next question. When did the conflict with Israel begin?
So from the very beginning of the time that Israel was formed after the UN, there was the first Arab-Israeli war, which occurred in 1947. So this is something that has been ongoing ever since the formation of Israel. As I said before, that the Yom Kippur War, 50 years ago was actually one such conflict. So you've seen continuous conflicts between the Palestinians and Israel, of the Arab states in Israel. But this most recent attack by the Hamas has potentially ended a lot of agreements between Arab states and Israel. There has been a number of agreements for peace or in that area, and Hamas, by attacking, has upended a lot of those peace agreements. And so that may have actually been the purpose of this attack, is that people had been ignoring the Palestinian question, had been ignoring Hamas, and had been making peace with Israel, recognizing Israel's right to exist. And so Hamas has re-raised the question about the Palestinians and re-raised the question about Israel's right to exist. Hamas wants to form a Muslim state from the Mediterranean to the Jordanian River, to the Red Sea. And so they don't want Israel there. They don't recognize Israel's right to exist. And that's what they're trying to renew the interest on the part of the other Arab states to back them in this idea that Israel is not legitimate.
So why did Hamas attack now?
So, as I said, we don't know exactly why now, but there has been a lot of movement here recently towards legitimizing Israel, towards finding peace, signing peace treaties between the different states by coming to agreements of doing trade. And so this has stopped that. This stopped it. So Hamas is taking advantage of the situation. Now, there was Prime Minister Netanyahu has some ongoing issues as far as political issues going on. He was trying to upend the Supreme Court there in Israel. And so this might have been seen as an opportunity to attack now because Israel was seen to have internal conflict and might have been weak. The Israeli intelligence service missed this attack, so maybe that weakness was real.
So in essence, what is this fight about?
So on the part of Hamas, the fight is for the Palestinian homeland. They don't recognize Israel's right to exist. They want the entire area to be returned back to the Palestinians and to become Muslim land. For the Israelis, this is a fight for their very existence. They have been there since, been recognized as the country since 1947. And for them, this is a matter of their existence. And so this is a fight for the control of the land that is Israel, but where the Palestinians in Gaza Strip want to remove Israel as the power in that area.
So now what? What comes next?
So as far as the Israelis go, they've started their air war and they are massing troops on the border and they are getting ready to enter into the Gaza Strip to try to rescue the hostages, to try to encounter Hamas and to end the threat of Hamas. The problem is that there are 2 million Palestinians within the Gaza Strip. And so that means that there are a lot of civilians who are there that are potential casualties in this conflict. And so we are looking at a conflict that will stretch weeks to months. This is not something that is going to be ended this week or next week. This is going to be a door-to-door fight, a tunnel-to-tunnel fight, and we will see how whether or not it is confined just to Israel and the Gaza Strip, or if it spreads to surrounding countries. Already we see some exchanges with Hezbollah to the north, with an exchange of mortar fire and missile fire, a few dead Hezbollah and a few dead IDF members there on the northern border. And so there is the potential for this to spread outside of Israel.
So I definitely want to ask you about that coming up as well. I think all of us are wondering, what does it mean to us? But let's first start with, do you have any sense of just how long this could last?
Weeks to months. This is not the Israeli defense minister said that this is a conflict that is going to take weeks to months. So that's just not my take on it. That is according to the IDF defense minister. This, as I say, it's a very difficult problem because once the Israeli troops go on the ground into the Gaza Strip, they are going to have to be battling Hamas within the Palestinian towns there. And so they will be encountering a lot of resistance from Hamas, but they'll also be encountering a lot of civilians. And so this is going to be a very messy conflict there on the ground. Additionally, there may be the possibility that Arab states may push back against this. They may decide to join the conflict there. And so it's going to be difficult to do enough to beat Hamas, but not do so much that it brings in other forces. Iran is hanging out there also. Iran may have helped plan this attack. They may have helped finance this attack. And Iran definitely wants to see this continue on. And so I would not discount the influence of Iran in this case also.
Mm-hmm. So that was another one of my questions, actually, of as this goes on, could this lead to wider war?
Absolutely. Is that, as I say, Hezbollah is exchanging rounds with the Israeli Defense Force now. And so there you have the possibility of this spreading over into Lebanon. You have Iran that is backing Hamas. And if they see the IDF inflicting too many casualties on the Hamas, they may get involved. Hezbollah said that if the IDF enters into the Gaza Strip, they will get involved. Egypt is right there on the border, so Egypt could become pulled into this conflict. There is a possibility for this to become a major power exchange there if it's not confined just to Israel and the Gaza Strip. This is very dangerous.
Right. If we have skin in this game, is one of the things that I've read. It's not just something far away. So if you could explain to us, how does this conflict affect all of us right here in America and even here in Connecticut?
So there were 11 American casualties with the initial attack. There may be American hostages being held by Hamas. But over and above that, President Biden, who is about to speak as we talk, he has already assured the Israelis that we will back Israel, that we will provide financial support to Israel, we will provide weapons to Israel. Now, we're already tapped out, I believe, as far as providing weapons. We've provided a lot of weapons to Ukraine. I don't know if we'll be able to support both the Ukrainian war going on with Russia and support the Israelis fighting there in Gaza Strip and be able to do both of those equally. So it will cause the United States to have to pick one side or the other. But as far as back here at home, there's a lot of protests going on around the country in support of the Palestinians, in support of Israel, and those protests could become violent. So the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI is working with local and state authorities, the law enforcement, to ensure that this does not become violent acts as opposed to just protests. But there is always a possibility that this could spill over and become violent here in the United States. Right now, it's just protests.
This is a crystal ball question, but as we look ahead, and we don't even know what's happening next, but as we look ahead, how does this affect things politically and even the next presidential election?
I don't have a crystal ball. I can't forecast how this is going to control, how it's going to affect the election. I think that it really depends upon how much we support Israel, how much we convince the world that we are still one of the leading superpowers here in the world, or if we're going to take a back seat to other countries and back off on this. I think that really America's posture will show our overall strength. If we are able to support Israel, if at the same time of supporting Ukraine, then that shows we are still very much one of the leading countries in the world. But we seem to have been backing away from that in numerous areas. But again, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how it'll affect the politics.
Absolutely. And we just appreciate your knowledge. Speaking, if you're just joining our streaming, Ken Gray is professor and expert in Homeland Security at University of New Haven. I guess one more question is that our Congress almost agrees on nothing these days, but when we read in the newspapers that there is bipartisan support for Israel, is that our official position as Americans? We stand with Israel?
So Israel had a lot of disagreement going on inside the country, but whenever they get attacked, they became once again one country. Same thing here in the United States is we are trying to put forward a united front, but there are very many Palestinian supporters here in this country. So it's not clear that we are 100% behind Israel. President Biden may say that, but there are an awful lot of Palestinian supporters throughout the country. And so it will take time to determine how united we are in this matter in supporting Israel. The fact that the Israelis were attacked and women and children were killed over this, that concert goers were killed over this, it's very hard to be supportive of that, and yet you see Palestinians rejoicing over this attack because it supports the Palestinian cause. So, we will see how this shakes out over the next couple of days to a couple of weeks.
Yes, right here in Connecticut, we've been covering both protests. Those in New Haven, there was one yesterday for Palestinians. Thousands turned out in West Hartford for Israel. The video, you can't deny that average person watching this, it's violent. It's scary to think that these women and children or your child went to a concert and then they were executed. But this, as we look at how violent this is, I'm wondering, I think people keep saying, well, how do we bring peace to this situation? I know peace in the Middle East is something that's been talked about for generations, but is there a path forward to peace that we as people can push for?
So Prime Minister Netanyahu is talking about achieving peace by bringing rubble to the Gaza Strip. He's talking about hitting Hamas and hitting Hamas very hard to where at the end of the day, there is no Hamas anymore. So that's one way towards peace. But there are other countries that are offering to broker peace in this case, to try to bring both sides to the negotiation table. I'm not sure if you can negotiate with a group that has invaded your country, killed your people, and taken hostages back, and then said, let's talk peace. That's going to be very difficult to get around. But nonetheless, Israel has been dealing with this with the Palestinians, and the Palestinians have been dealing with this with Israel for ever since the formation of Israel. And so they have managed to find peace in the past. Perhaps there is a pathway to peace. But right now, the hawks are saying, make the rubble bounce in the Gaza Strip.
Ken Graves from the University of New Haven. Thank you so much for being with us. Actually, I do have one more question. There's been something on Facebook where people said, why is the news calling it a war? And what should we call this? Israel has called it a war. Is it a war in your book?
So I would classify this as a war when you have invaders coming across the border and killing people in the other side of that border. But then again, there have been many exchanges, missile exchanges before. So conflict is another word that I see used often. But President or Prime Minister Netanyahu has certainly used the word war, that they are at war with Hamas.
Yes, I've heard him and seen him say that. So that's why I asked. So that's, and that is why, if people are watching this on streaming, that is why we are calling that here at Channel 3, and most of the networks are calling that, as we wait for President Biden to speak as well. Help people understand, I think for those, this is a different part of the world for so many people and has such a long and complicated history. Is there a risk of nuclear war with what's going on now?
So Israel may have nukes. The Palestinians do not. Iran is trying to develop nuclear weapons. Their progress towards actually having a nuke, it's not clear whether they are at that point yet or not. There's always a possibility that another power that has nuclear weapons may get involved. But I think that the Israelis are trying to confine this to a conflict with the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and trying to keep it from spreading outside their country, much less than becoming a nuclear war. But, World War I started with Archduke Ferdinand being assassinated, and the next thing you know, you had all the countries in Europe at that time that were engaged in the war. World War II was a continuation of World War I, and so these things tend to spread. So hopefully this will be confined and be confined to non-nuclear.
Thank you. Ken Graves, anything else you think is really important for people to know before we let you go for now? Thank you for all
I
your
think
insight.
it'll be very interesting to hear what President Biden has to say today to outline the U.S.'s response. They've already moved carrier group from the Med to the Eastern Med to help get Americans out of that area. So I'm looking forward to hearing what President Biden has to say.
You know, I keep saying last question, but one more, just so people understand. There are people, and some may be thinking, oh, you know, it's Jews who are mostly affected by this here in America. But our Jewish neighbors, there are many, by the way, thousands here in Connecticut, who might actually have relatives who are stuck there. I've heard families who were over there visiting for the holidays, and now they're stuck there, or vice versa. In Israel, it's mandatory to serve in the military. So we're talking about cousins or family members who are all between the ages of 18 and 22 that people are very, very worried about, right?
Absolutely. So it is the duty of all Israeli citizens to serve. And so you see both men and women throughout Israel that are either in the IDF or are doing training with the IDF. And they have done a call up of the IDF members. And so that's why it has taken a while to get members to the area to get ready to do the land advance into the Gaza Strip. If you are an American citizen and you are over visiting relatives in Israel or attending the concert as they were at the time, they're not going to be recruited into the IDF. It's for the Israeli citizens for that. But nonetheless, they may see fellow family members that are there that are Israeli citizens that will be called up and asked to serve. Again, it's the duty of all Israeli citizens to be part of the IDF when called.
Hamas has said they're going to kill the hostages every time every time Israel does something like launches another rocket into Gaza Strip. So we don't know exactly who has been taken hostage, but do you expect that there are Americans among the hostages and that we will see people die based on the threats by Hamas?
Again, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't say what Hamas is actually going to do or not do. My guess is that the hostages have been split up and spread around throughout the Gaza Strip, so that there's no one central point where a rescue force could go in and recapture all the hostages and get them out of the country. I think they're spread around, but I would not be surprised if we do to see a few killed on camera, to convince the world that they do have human shields. That's what they are being used for, is human shields. The human life being the risk of that person being killed to stop the IDF from taking action against them. But Netanyahu has promised that they are going to go in and take military action in the Gaza Strip. And so we will see if Hamas carries through on their promise. Already there have been airstrikes with a lot of targets inside the Gaza Strip, and we have not heard of any hostages being killed so far.
Ken Graves, I'm sure we will keep in touch with you. Thank you again. This time I really will let you go as we wait for President Biden. I know we'll be streaming that as well as soon as, if you're joining us on our app or WFSB Plus, of course, we will bring you the president's speech as well. Ken Graves from the University of New Haven, thank you so much.
Thank you.